as prices continue to rise, it's important to equip ourselves with old-fashioned frugal skills, similar to what they used during the Great Depression. Today, I'm going to share a meal that cost less than $4 for my family of 6 and a yummy cake that many ate during the Great Depression. And as always, some biblical encouragement along the way. So go grab a cup of coffee or go start a load of laundry and let's dig in. What an honor it is to be able to learn from the wise generation that lived and survived through the Great Depression. Many of them survived by eating lots of potatoes. One, because potatoes were such an easy thing to grow in the garden, and also a pretty frugal thing to purchase from the store or barter with back in the day. And I would say it is pretty true that potatoes are still affordable at the store today. Currently, a 5-pound bag of potatoes from Walmart is $2.97. So today we are going to be making a Depression era potato soup. Now, back then, dairy was really hard to come by, especially if you didn't live on a farm or had a dairy cow. So we are going to be making this soup without any dairy. We are going to be using simple and frugal ingredients like onion, potato, and some bone broth. Now, if you do not have any bone broth or you didn't make any bone broth, you could use vegetable broth as well. And in worst case scenarios where you have nothing, water would work as well. You would just need a little bit more seasoning. So I'm going to go ahead and start getting these onions sauteing, and then I'm going to add the potatoes and carrots as well and get those sauteed. Being able to use basic ingredients to create and craft multiple meals is going to be key to be able to save money during hard times, during a depression, a recession, during tariff wars, or whatever is going on. Frugal meals do not have to be complicated. As you can see, I am using the basic ingredients that are going to last a long time. Now, I have never grown potatoes, but this season I'm going to try. And so you can come along and watch me hopefully succeed in that. But they are usually fairly easy to grow. Same with carrots. So, and these are also things that last in the pantry for a very long time. This is why I think so many meals in the Depression era were based on potatoes and root vegetables because they could last for a long time. So they grew enough for their family and to put away in the pantry. Making a soup also can stretch your dollar so much. You can get so much more out of a meal when it is soup based. I've done this for many years to just stretch a meal for our family. And thankfully, my family doesn't complain too much about leftovers. But if your family does, I have a video that I'll link down below that talks about how you can reuse and make new meals out of leftovers. During these times when prices are rising and it can feel scary and uncertain, we should be mindful and prepared. But I do not think that we should live in fear. In fact, God does not call us to live in fear. He is our provider and He will provide what we need, even if it may not be what we may want. I have a video talking about that as well, but He is our ultimate provider. Matthew 6:25 says, "Do not be worried about your life as to what you will eat or what you will drink, nor for your body as to what you will put on." Now, yes, that may be easy for me to say right now because we have a pantry full, we have clothes, we have a warm house, but that hasn't always been that way. Growing up as a child, my husband and myself both have been in and out of poverty. Going to food banks, having the water and electricity turned off, and wondering where your next meal is going to come from. But my husband and I both can stand here firm today and say that our Lord is a good God. He is a provider, and we trust in Him. So I encourage you, friend, if you are currently going through that season right now, to not lose hope, to turn to Jesus Christ and open your Bible and be encouraged through His Word. It doesn't mean that God is a magic genie that's going to give you everything you want and need immediately, but the hope in Him is going to sustain you through this hard time. It has been such a beautiful day today. I am just so blessed that the sun is shining bright. So now, after those potatoes and carrots have been sauteing for a while, it is time to add in the water and the chicken broth. I ended up adding some more water to make the soup not as thick. And then you're just going to take a wooden spoon and kind of mash it down. Don't use like an immersion blender or anything because then it'll get kind of mushy. A while ago, I was blessed enough to receive these old cooking books from my great grandmother. And I love to pull them out every now and then and just go through them. And I thought it would be a great idea, especially because I am focusing this video on the Great Depression era. This old cooking book was from 1928, and it was just so cool to be able to go through and look at all the recipes. To see my great grandmother's handwritten recipes that she has written down and marked very good, and all of those is just so special and sweet. And I plan to go through a lot of these recipes and make them here with you guys as well. I came across this little devotional, God in My Kitchen, so I'm going to read a devotion out of there. This one is called Dishwashing Devotions. A homemaker was peeling potatoes when someone remarked, "It is too bad that a girl with your ability has to spend her time peeling potatoes." She glanced up and smiled, "But when I peel potatoes, I don't have to think about them. I can think about the Lord." She knew a secret of being happy while working in the kitchen. Gradually, as she peeled potatoes, washed the dishes, and even did the shopping, she began to think of God. "In time," she said, "the time of business does not, with me, differ from the time of prayer. And in the noise and clatter of my kitchen, while several persons are at the same time calling for different things, I possess God in as great tranquility as if I were upon my knees at the altar." She learned the great secret of practicing the presence of God. Many women have also learned the secret of rising above the monotony of housework. One person I know has memorized many chapters of the Bible. While she vacuums, she repeats the chapters from memory, and they warm her heart. Another friend keeps a poem in a plastic frame over her sink, and as she washes the dishes, she memorizes the poem. Beds have to be made, dishes have to be washed. There is no way to avoid housework. While your hands do automatic tasks, your thoughts can be on God and your life be filled with joy. As I was researching Depression era foods, I really wanted to make this depression cake. And I was like, wouldn't it be so cool if this recipe was in one of my great grandmother's recipe books? And sure enough, I found it in this book. It was recipes from Sweden. She called it a Wacky cake, which I also read that the depression cake is also called that as well. This cake does not use any dairy or any eggs because, like I said before, those were kind of hard to come by back then. So you use vinegar in place of those ingredients, and the baking soda and vinegar have a chemical reaction and it makes the cake rise. This cake was so yummy. I honestly was a little skeptical about this cake because the ingredients are few. The sugar, there's not a lot of sugar, and so I was thinking it was going to be more of not a sweet bread, but it was sweet and the frosting was so good, and I'm just excited to walk you through this process. So you are going to use some flour, and I assume they used freshly milled flour back then. It kept a lot longer in the pantry and it is more frugal. A quick Google search shows that the milling industry wasn't successful until the mid to late 19th century. So yes, I'm gonna continue to assume that they used freshly milled flour. I love that this generation is slowly turning back to the old-fashioned roots, the freshly milled flours, whether that is for health reasons, which is one of the reasons my family is doing it, but also for the frugality of it. It is just more cost effective and it is so much better for you, which is a video for another day. If you want to hear all of the reasons why freshly milled flour is so much better for you, then leave that down in the comments and maybe I'll do a video on that as well. So you have your flour, you're gonna take some oil, some water, some cocoa powder, vinegar, and vanilla extract. Oh, and you cannot forget the baking soda because that is what makes the chemical reaction to make your cake rise. After reading in my old great-grandmother's devotional for the homemaker, it just made me start thinking about how we serve the same God. The God that she was praising and getting close to is the same God that I serve today. And for many, many years to come and many, many years previously, he always was and he always will be the same God. I never met my great-grandmother, but I think it is so cool to be able to bond still over the Lord and over some home-cooked meals. I'm going to add that to the oven for 25 to 35 minutes at 350 degrees. This is a recipe that I don't think was from the Great Depression era because I'm using cheese and butter and 1 egg, but I wanted some rolls or biscuits to go with our soup tonight, so I'm gonna whip those up. I use just some shredded cheese. I shredded some cheese from a cheese block. Now, if your family can afford to have dairy in your fridge, then I recommend buying in bulk if possible and buying blocks of cheese. Do not buy pre-packaged shredded cheese. Not only is it not as good, but it is so much more to buy it already. Just take a few extra minutes and shred your cheese and you'll thank me, your wallet will thank me, and your taste buds will as well. So I was kind of experimenting with this recipe. I wanted something quick. I didn't have time to let things rise, and I didn't have any activated or active yeast. So I was going to use some of my sourdough discard. I added way too much to the mixture. I think next time I will do probably like 1/4 a cup, and this time I used about a half a cup. And I'm just gonna whisk the egg and sourdough discard together. Now, I use a potato flake sourdough starter. I just preferred so much more than the typical sourdough starter. I think if we did have to cut back a lot more, I'm not sure which one would be the most cost effective, honestly. Probably the typical sourdough, just because you only need flour and water for that one. And this one, you need potato flakes, water, and a little bit of sugar. So I'm just kneading the butter into the flour and adding my cheese. Now, if you don't have any cheese on hand, this recipe would be fine without it. And then I add the wet mixture in. I had to add a lot more flour because, like I said, I used way too much starter. So I just added some more, and then I'm going to use a mason jar ring to cut out the biscuits. Now, this was a rushed recipe that I'm still trying to figure out, so they didn't turn out too great. I wouldn't even say that they were biscuits. They turned into more of like circular rolls. They still tasted good, although they had a really strong sour taste because I added too much sourdough starter, but I will continue to perfect these and then I will have them up on the blog. Now it's time to make some powdered sugar for the frosting for our cake. I didn't have any powdered sugar, so guess what? I made some. I just took regular sugar and then I added it to a coffee grinder and grinded it up until I had fine powder. and then added it in, and then I added some more cocoa powder, a little bit of milk, which you could also use water, a little bit of butter, and mix that up to make this frosting. We don't always have dessert after dinner, and I'm sure they did not as well back in the Great Depression era, but it was sure a treat for my family, and my kiddos were so excited to eat this cake. They wanted to have it before we even ate our dinner. It was fairly easy to make with simple ingredients that you probably already have in your pantry, and it was actually yummy. So I'm definitely going to be making this cake a lot more, and I will have that recipe down in the description if you want to try it as well. Like I said previously, this is not the time to live in fear, but it is the time to be prepared. Make sure your pantries are always stocked to your best ability. Now, I know that isn't a possibility for some, but if you are able, live below your means in certain areas of your life and stock up on the things that you can. Now, don't go running to the store and buy up all the toilet paper, but instead, when you are purchasing a bag of rice, purchase an extra one if you can and stash that away for a rainy day, and just continue doing that with your canned goods. Buy a few extra cans of corn, buy a few extra bags of beans, and stash those away so you have meals that you can prepare on a rainy day. I will have a whole list that you can download of top things to keep in your pantry at all times. Go check that out if you're interested. Thank you guys so much for watching this video today. Let me know what you learned down in the comments and how you save money as well. My name is Destiny, and I will catch you guys on the next one, but in the meantime, check this video out. I think you'll love it.